So I'm glad that everybody's made it here. If you would mind opening the curtains, can you help with that, Fifi? I look into the audience. Got a bunch of people waiting. Yeah, really glad that all could make it. Today, I'm gonna try Jamal. No, can I have to pronounce it? Design an open world in Minecraft. So really cool panel. I've been following this project for a little bit, and the stuff that they have to show is really cool. So hope you all enjoy it. He's letting a couple more people filter in, I believe. So, okay, everybody who's on stage, you ready to start? This would
Yep.
be lovely. This would be just Discord, by the way. A couple people on stage don't have the mod, and a couple people have it muted. So this would be a just Discord one. Okay, if everybody's on stage ready, can somebody open the curtains, please?
I've got it.
Oh, yeah, when you're ready, of course. Yeah.
Yep. Alrighty. Here we go. Hello, Smith Summit. We hope everyone has been enjoying the convention over these last couple of weeks, and we're happy to see you here. We are here representing the Primordial team, developers of the Jamal Apotheosis adventure map. To our lovely community, thank you very much for showing out, and for those of you who aren't as familiar with Jamal, it's very nice to meet you. Today, we will be discussing the open world design principles that govern Minecraft's premier open world adventure map. We call these principles chiseled stone brick game design. This defines how we made a massive, detailed, immersive adventure map within the confines of vanilla Minecraft. Firstly, for anyone unfamiliar, Dramal is a 12,000 by 12,000 block fantasy world with more than 30 diverse biomes, hundreds of structures, over a dozen towns, dungeons, and so much more. It's a really big experience. A first playthrough can take 40 to 100 hours depending on how thorough of an explorer you are. We also feature a full story quest with more subtle and immersive storytelling than what is common for most adventure maps. We try to avoid very obvious gamey elements and communicate our narrative through plausible in-world sources. Our core goal in making Dramal was to create an open world that satisfies the desire to explore, but with an incredible degree of intentionality. To introduce our presenters here, my name is Rift. My pronouns are he, they, and I am Dramal's co-creator, and I have been a dev since the dawn of time, otherwise known as 2016.
Hi, I'm Green Tetrahedron, also known as Tetra. My pronouns are she, her. I am a writer and designer for Dramal, and I've been with the team since shortly after the start of 2.2 development.
Tyler. I am Macaroni2, also better known for Jamal things as my Discord username K182 or just K1 for short. I'm a newer dev. I only joined recently in last November. I'm also a writer, designer, and I've been dabbling a good bit with the data packs recently.
So, first, we should talk about our inspirations for Jamal. We draw a lot from Zelda Breath of the Wild, Outer Wilds, and the Dark Souls series. With Breath of the Wild, we take cues from its open world structure, fast travel point, progression system, and satisfying exploration. We wanted that same sort of feeling in Jamal. Many of our devs can be considered disciples of Outer Wilds and its game design. We take a lot of cues from its nonlinear storytelling, joy of exploration, and knowledge-based puzzle design. With Dark Souls, we draw from its mastery of level design, atmosphere, and methods of lore dispersal. So, for a brief history about us, Dramal has been in development for about 10 years, first beginning as a roleplay setting for an SMP among high school friends. We went through multiple iterations as a custom map before releasing as Jamal Primordial on March 31st, 2020. Since then, we have accrued over 400,000 downloads across all versions and sit as one of the top 25 most viewed adventure maps on Planet Minecraft. V2.2 Apotheosis released on April 5th, 2024, and we are currently well underway into development on V2.3. Our team right now consists of over 25 very talented developers from all disciplines between building, coding, writing, artists, composers, and social media content creators. And now, not to tell you to leave immediately, but if anything I've told you about Jamal has interested you and you might want to play it, Jamal is an experience best had blind. There will be significant spoilers later, and we will be giving another warning before we get into that. So, before we talk about Jamal, we need to first understand some problems that open world games face. Open worlds are huge, and filling them with unique and engaging content is a massive undertaking. Even huge, well-funded studios tend to really struggle with this, and realistically, you can't fill a world of this size with entirely unique content. And even if we could, it'd be impossible to test everything reasonably. So we asked ourselves, how do other games solve this? Breath of the Wild has Korok seeds, which are identifiable, repeatable, and quickly understood puzzles. They fill Hyrule with small activities to break up the pace of exploration and create a reusable puzzle language. Elden Ring has 10 years of assets from previous games to draw from, where enemies, structures, weapons, and more are reused where applicable. This allows for a lot of side content that feels distinct without being completely new. And Skyrim benefits from having modular assets to be used as like model kits to build dungeons and encounters more efficiently. So Jamal had an issue of being a two-person project at the start. And so we needed to figure out how to achieve this kind of scalability in Minecraft. So Minecraft may not be the ideal game engine, but we get some benefits in having pre-made assets, accessible 3D environment building, and some assets that are among the most recognizable in gaming. We needed something visually distinct, easy to grab from creative inventory, and perfect for simple open world puzzles. That's where we got the chiseled stone brick. Within the first 5 minutes of starting Jamal, we established that chiseled stone bricks are markers for progression. In order to leave the tutorial, you need to break chiseled stone brick walls. This teaches the player immediately to watch out for these blocks. And to that effect, we also have to employ pretty strict placement rules with them to ensure consistency. Chiseled stone bricks are never decorative. They always point towards something. So as soon as the player leaves spawn and start exploring, they'll find that chiseled stone bricks often hide loot. This is their main use throughout most of the map. It's a very simple puzzle, but it's a simple mechanic that can be iterated on for dozens of hours. And it creates a very satisfying gameplay loop. This loop becomes you see a structure, you go to structure, you find the chiseled stone brick, and you break it for some loot. This creates short-term goals in exploration, and while the loot wasn't really hidden, the player still feels a sense of accomplishment for finding and breaking the chiseled block. Here's an example of a chiseled block structure you might encounter within roughly your first hour of playtime. It's this little pyramid near the main road on the way to the first town. There's 3 bottom blocks, one doesn't match, you break it, and you open the chest. As you can see on my side screens here, we employ every kind of chisel block for these puzzles, not just stone bricks. So as you get further into Jamal, we start to iterate on this puzzle a bit more. At our legally distinct Stonehenge here, you'll see multiple chiseled stone bricks on these pillars, and we have conditioned your lizard brain to want to break them. But if you break these, you'll find nothing but cobblestone behind them. Instead, we put the chest here where there is no chiseled stone brick. And this evolves the mechanic from a simple C block break block into more of a spot the difference kind of puzzle. This is pattern recognition. And if there's one thing that our brains are good at, it's pattern recognition. So, with nothing but a strategic use of vanilla blocks, we've created a system that allows us to make lots of content with subtle differences very easily. All builders got to do is pick a block that stands out from its surroundings, put a chest behind it, and then there we go. We can create a huge volume of content at a tiny development cost. It also helps to keep exploration fresh. Players will never know what kind of curveball the next structure will throw at them. Puzzles also feel good. Even if it's not complex, every time players engage with the mechanic, they get a nice little dopamine hit. And best of all, it requires basically no testing. All we need to do to test a structure is to ask another dev if the block placement is too obscure or not. And while it is relatively simple, it's incredibly effective. On my side screens here, you'll see some testimonials from our players saying that our chisel stone bricks have permanently modified their brain chemistry, and if that's not a ringing endorsement, I don't know what is. So why does it work? As I said, spot the difference puzzles are good for pattern recognition, which is universally approachable because it's something our brains are just very, very good at. And so we exploit that very successfully. The way we use these puzzles are part of what we call chiseled stone brick game design. Within Minecraft's limitations and tools, we ask ourselves, what is our simplest and most efficient solution? We try to carry this thinking forward throughout the rest of our design with Dramal. Fundamentally, chiseled stone brick game design is about directing player attention. In an open world, this is absolutely crucial. We want to guide players, but we don't want to force them down a path. Chisel blocks help us guide players through a structure, but how do we do this on more of a macro level with the rest of our world design? Dramal's terrain is vital. It's one of its greatest strengths, and there are a lot of considerations that went into designing that terrain. Most games have the benefit of long draw distances. In an open world where players can go anywhere, it's easy for them to lose sight of their goal, so they need major landmarks to go off of. In Elden Ring, they have castles off in the distance miles away, and Zelda Breath of the Wild will show you mountain ranges climbable from afar. Other games with control over their draw distance make great use of it, but in vanilla Minecraft, we have a pretty strict limitation. On my side screens here, this shows a 12 chunk render distance. This is pretty standard as a default for most players, but here in Dramal, you can't even see the other side of this ruin. And so without additional mods, we can't guarantee long distance visibility, and players can only see a couple hundred blocks in front of them. So how do we guide players towards something they can't see? This is where what we call spider webbing comes into play. If players can't see the thing we want them to, then we show them something nearby that leads towards the target. So from a central point of interest, we build out a web of smaller structures. These structures radiate outward, and small builds lead toward a major destination. And this is something we are really leaning into for 2.3. Players will feel like they have naturally discovered points of interest, even though we were guiding them along all along. They have an added benefit, too, of making the world feel more lived in, where you find sort of a messy sprawl of civilization before reaching its center. An example here is this town we've been working on for 2.3, where you have the town at the center, and then the sprawl leading out to it that spider webs you directly towards it. Spider webbing also to help prevent players from getting completely lost and adds a bit of texture to exploration. A problem with open worlds is that by nature, some areas just won't have much happening. Getting lost is part of gameplay, and it can be fun, but 30 minutes without a real path, and you're lost and nothing's happening, frustration starts to build, and being lost stops being fun. But then you see signs of civilization, ruined train tracks, an abandoned well, wheat fields, something like that. The player will realize that you're not that far from somewhere, and there's a new place to discover nearby. It creates some necessary tension in exploration. Being lost creates that uncertainty and that tension, and then the signs of civilization through spiderwebbing help to release it. That cycle of tension is a key part of our world design. If the point of interest is a big one, its spiderweb set pieces can really help to build it up. Another benefit here is through environmental storytelling. Spiderweb structures aren't just random filler. We ask ourselves, what structures belong here? What do they imply about the destination? What happened here? What does this tell the player before they even arrive? It helps to make our world feel richer, more coherent, and lived in. So we've talked about populating the open world, but what about actually making it? Terrain is central to Dramal's identity. We want it to be pretty, we want it to be conceivably natural, but most importantly, how does it play? So this is where the Kiko path comes into play, and This is something that was coined by our very own tetrahedron and made by Kiko100, who's in the audience right there. He is he's my co-creator, and he's behind all of the original terrain in Dramal. So Kiko paths are these smooth inclines up cliffs and mountains. They blend with the terrain and still read as obvious paths. Recognizing it might be a slight immersion hit, but it's a reminder that the world is crafted intentionally and that every chunk has a purpose. There's a distinction here between cliffs and mountains designed to block you versus ones you're meant to climb. In a world where you're meant to go anywhere, the terrain needs to be readable. So we've established how to guide players to things. How do we keep them away from things? Traditional games have things like impassable cliffs, mountains, and invisible walls to prevent players from going entirely off the rails. But doing that in Minecraft severely limits player freedom. In Dramal, we get around this by having these two mountain ranges, one to the west and one to the east. It divides the continent roughly into thirds. These mountain ranges are intentionally empty, difficult, and tedious to traverse, which sounds like bad design, but really, we don't want you here. We let players retain their agency where they can choose to either trek through these boring mountains or turn around and explore the cool biome and find actual content. There's no hard limitation here, but the world signals a better experience. And with how these mountains are laid out, Dramal is roughly in the shape of a figure 8. So here you can see roughly any kind of path that players can take through the map, and we can make that a little bit more detailed. So right here is the starting location, and the player can choose to go down any of these ways, and eventually they will loop back into something new. So we can see an example of that path here, where the player starts in the middle, and they head up to the northwest, down and around, back up, and oh, they're back where they started. So now they can choose a new path and loop back around into new content. And along this path, you'll find plenty of points of interest that we've laid out for you to keep the exploration fresh. And while going along this main loop, you'll also find these side paths that lead off to even more content. And then, of course, more points of interest along those paths. Let's see. So now we get into talking about how this same philosophy carries into individual biomes. We get natural guidance here through rivers, cliffs, and lowlands. The terrain creates paths, the paths loop back, and they return to the main path in other loops. So ask yourself, would you rather try to scale up this treacherous cliff, or follow the path down along this nice, easy river? The natural choice is going to be that gentle route down the river, and so that allows us to guide the player without forcing them. We carry this sort of looping world design thinking into individual biomes. Our case study here with Mariul, which is one of the first places you enter after the Central Plains. You enter from the bottom right, and this is our main loop, and then we branch out in these smaller regional loops. And these smaller regional loops lead into other points of interest. And then these blue stars here are going to be a little more out of the way points of interest. The more time you spend in Mariul here going through these looping paths builds a sense of geographical familiarity, a sense of place. The time you spend here makes it feel more real and gets you invested in the location. And because we don't provide any detailed base game maps, players begin to develop a mental map through exploration. So all of this defines our base layer of gameplay. Everything so far, from chiseled stone brick puzzles to spider webbing, terrain, and these world design principles, are what players are going to interact with most through their time in Dramal. That first layer is the feel of exploration, and in an open world game, this is what we need to get right first. And the beauty of this base layer is builders are all we need here. Coders, artists, and writers don't need to touch everything. And if everyone had to touch everything in Dramal, nothing would ever get done. So with resource allocation here, if you were to spend 100 hours of slow exploration, chiseled stone bricks, and simple puzzles, it would get pretty boring. So where do all of our disciplines come together? Where do we invest more time? What do our coders, writers, and artists actually do? Well, they take care of the parts of our game that are less of an open world. Because our core gameplay is so simple, efficient, and effective, we can put more resources into special locations. And that's where we enter the dungeon.
These sorts of tightly designed areas can be collectively thought of as dungeons, as there's hardly a binary division on what is a city and what is a dungeon, with many points of interest existing somewhere on the spectrum between them. For instance, explore a case study. After following these webs of structures and natural pathways, players will discover our more special content. These places can take many shapes, be it cozy hamlets or sprawling cities, small band camps, or enormous towering fortresses, or sometimes just a simple set of ruins. As an example, we'll be exploring one of our favorite locations, the Burnt Palace. The palace is a massive labyrinthian castle at the center of an active caldera, surrounded by swarms of ghasts and filled with a small army of enemies. It serves as a capstone to one of the side paths in the broader world. During their journey, players will hear of the god of chaos Malus, a warmongering deity who has enslaved villages and brought ruin to entire ecosystems. To reach this throne, you need to, first, traverse a river of lava and a barren red desert that even the hardiest survivalist will struggle to get through. Then, brave the city of Raveloth, a walled dungeon city where everyone wants to kill and eat you. Then make your way through the Crimson Gorge, a tight, oppressive maze of sprawling rock, and then you make it to the center of the exactly as inhospitable as they sound Hellcrags, all to stand before its gate. For more thorough players, this might be several hours of gameplay just to make it to the dungeon. How do we pay that off? Fundamentally, even this place operates on simple design principles. Looping paths, instead of being built into the terrain, are grand hallways. Chiseled stone bricks hide secret passageways and mob spawners. It's a non-linear build that forces you to explore on your own to find its secrets. These principles are recontextualized in a dungeon, adding to the feel of the place. The tight loops result in a quick push and pull of getting lost and returning to the main chambers to reorient yourself. This makes exploring the Burnt Palace more immediately rewarding than exploring the open world, even though it's just the same pattern scaled down. It absolutely is a step up from the base gameplay experience, of course, and people really enjoy it. But if you break the palace down to its simplest components, what we have is 7 enemy types with custom attributes and gear, 2 scripted ambushes and a scripted door opening animation, a single unique music track, a special mythical weapon at the end, and a lot of pertinent lore. Especially on the coding side, this is still pretty minimal. It may feel underwhelming in other maps, but as a part of Dramal's open world, this stands out to many players. Part of that is just because it's a very cool set piece, but exploring a tight, confined dungeon is a very welcome gameplay switch up as well. There are other places throughout Dramal with similar level of dungeon style presentation. Both of these examples are more involved on the programming side, but require less from other disciplines. This sort of pattern, focusing each point of interest on a specific fantasy fillable by a specific discipline, allows each new dungeon to feel fresh and novel. The Foundry, for instance, is a wave-based battle arena heavily inspired by Doom, with level design to match. Its build is visually impressive, but rather straightforward, with the bulk of the exterior being largely tileable and the interior being a simple stone brick style. Additionally, it took very little from the writers. The Epicenter is a different kind of combat encounter, a boss arena with a single powerful opponent you can practically just wander into, and the build in which it takes place was made in under an hour. Each of these fulfills a different fantasy, and they're placed far apart in the open world to spread our best content out. When the base layer gets stale, dungeons keep things fresh and exciting. You never know when you'll find a dungeon like the Burnt Palace to suck up your next 2 hours of gameplay, but what you explore next will inevitably point you towards something good. So now it's time to talk about the height of what Dremel has to offer. We invite you to come along on the ride of Dremel's pinnacle experience. This is where the aforementioned second spoiler warning comes in. If you haven't played Dremel and this panel has made you want to do a proper spoiler-free playthrough, now would be a good time for you to bow out. The VOD will always be there. All right. So I've already discussed the use of CSB patterns when applied to a dungeon, but as I mentioned, the Burnt Palace is still relatively simple. What does a fuller featured Dramal dungeon look like? One where every part of the team really goes all out. Set the scene a little bit. During your journey through Dramal, you'll have seen many mentions of a mysterious craft named the Aphelion, which is implied to be the mythical flagship of the Lost Empire apps. Despite many historical attempts to find it, none have succeeded, and you, the player, won't be able to find it anywhere on the map either. Then, about 2/3 of the way through Dramal's story, you're tasked with going to the Terminus, which was previously used as not much more than an interstitial space between the kind of gamey warp towers. There, you're asked to board a ship that will take you to the Aphelion. Finally, you see it. A massive hangar door within the terminus opens, revealing that it and the Aphelion have been space stations in orbit around the divine moon of Lodar this entire time. The Aphelion is a key part of Dramal's story, resolving one of the biggest mysteries and quite a few ancillary mysteries about the Empire you've spent the game learning about, while simultaneously raising even further questions relating to the true endgame of the map. On top of that, it acts as a gateway to the second major area players can visit, Lodar. This is presented via a sequence where you literally drop a warp tower from a construction bay in the Aphelion onto Lodar, which also explains how the system was set up by Avstom in the first place. Now, I'll talk a bit more about Lodar in just a second, but it is really important that we put so much effort into the Aphelion because it comes right at the point where players might start feeling they've seen most of what Dramal has to offer. With where it's placed in the story, a player has seen 3 major story locations, solved the puzzles there, explored a majority of the world, and is well equipped for all vanilla combat encounters they'll find. This is one of the biggest moments of payoff in Dramal, and we want it to be extremely memorable. We do this by being showy. The novelty and excitement of going from a pretty low-tech pretty low-tech post-apocalypse world to literally in space is extremely striking. Spectacle is key here. The Aphelion features a fully animated shuttle sequence, a dense and interweaving maze of abandoned space station halls to navigate, 2 unique music tracks, space Roombas, as you can see here, and a new setting that totally recontextualizes what players thought they knew, Lodar. Lodar was first conceptualized in large part as a replacement for the Nether, as we felt that the Hellish dimension didn't fit the tone of Dramal. It's much smaller than the overworld, but much denser to compensate, with tons of custom enemies, highly involved puzzles, and a truly fantastical landscape that breaks away from the more geologically and hydrologically grounded, naturalistic approach we take with the overworld. And ultimately, this is where you uncover the clearest vision of your ultimate objective in the game. Now,
All right. So, now that we have gone over the biggest part of the experience, you should have a pretty decent idea of what Dramal is like, all the way from the base layer of gameplay up to our most grandiose, biggest scenes like the Aphelion. We've already touched a bit on how we involve code to elevate certain experiences, but I'd like to get a little bit into what code looks like more broadly for an open world map. So, first off, do not get it twisted. Just because we try to use our data pack sparingly does not mean that we have no code. All right. On the right side of the side screens here, we have one of my favorite examples of our data pack at work, which is the Dramal Exploration heat map. For the entirety of your playthrough, this map is actually tracking you as you explore. And after you finish the story, you can look at this dynamically generated summary of your own journey. If nothing else, it's a really impressive amount of calculations that goes into a cool little feature. And there's all kinds of things like this that are going on in the back end as you're playing. The main data pack for Dramal's current version, Hi Dramal, is a genuinely massive piece of work. It comes from the combined efforts of over a half dozen coders across over 3 years of development now. And over here on the left side of the side screens, you can see the current set of namespaces that we have on the 2.3 version of the update. And it's only getting bigger, as you can see. These are all filled with code, and they're only continuing to grow as we port from 1.20.1 to whatever version we end up on for the next update. And there have already been hundreds of hours put into reorganizing the pack, optimizing old code, and working on more original systems to elegantly handle all of the content that we want to include. However, we are not really here to talk about the intricacies of our data pack. What we care for the sake of this conversation, is how a data pack can contribute to an open world. The pack is large, yes, but the world is still larger. So, how do we effectively make use of custom-coded features in an open world? As it would turn out, this balance is pretty crucial to what makes Dremel tick. As previously mentioned, significant code effort does go into some specific locations. Dungeons like the Foundry, boss fights, and main story locations are all pretty code intensive. This is important to give life to the marquee locations in the open world, and they do their job well, but these special moments are spread out for pacing purposes, and they can't really do all that much to elevate the moment-to-moment gameplay experience in the rest of a world, which is mostly an open world exploration game. Things will get stale if you're just bouncing between these points that are actually fun, and so another role of the data pack is giving players something that they can take with them. Something that impacts their gameplay beyond individual scenes, which is key to developing a feeling of progression in Dremel. One of the most obvious ways that we do this is through custom gear. Dremel features over 35 pieces of legendary and mythical level gear, each of which has its own unique data pack driven functionality. Every one of them fills a different niche, allowing for something akin to RPG-style build crafting. Most of them are combat-oriented, like Oblivion here, which is this cool purple scythe that allows you to command grab and lifesteal enemies, as you can see me dunking all over the 3rd Burnt General Ethgar here on the sides. But some of them, like Avsom Cole, which is our modified version of the Elytra, are more designed for traversal, which may not sound all that crazy, but in a world that is built around exploration of an open world, this is kind of a game changer. As players explore our world and progress through the story, they're going to naturally accumulate a large collection of these items. These do serve on their own as a satisfying reward for completing a dungeon, sure, but perhaps more importantly, they lead to new emergent gameplay possibilities for the rest of their playthrough. Something as simple as walking through the world at this point necessarily also means that you're engaging with custom content. So, having brought our code into the fold, it is now time to start bringing everything together. We have gone over the central philosophy behind Dremel's open world design and how it informs essentially every decision that goes into the whole map. So now, let's take a step back and really look at the whole picture. How do the pieces of this open world come together? Necessarily, an open world needs to have content that is more engaging and content that is less engaging. To visualize how that all fits together, I have come up with a visual aid. This is the open world complexity pyramid, as I am calling it. So, to understand this diagram, I want you to imagine all of Dremel's physical locations, the actual places that make up the world, as composing this pyramid. The pyramid is separated into 5 tiers, as we can see here, and as we go up, you're increasing in this metric that I'm calling locations. Well as the overall amount of custom content that it has to offer. So think build complexity, custom enemies, level design, writing, music, the whole thing. Importantly, you will notice that each layer has an arrow pointing upward to the next layer. This is because on a broad scale, all of the open world content is in some capacity trying to funnel you upward towards our higher tier, more engaging experiences. The bottom of the pyramid down here is what we earlier defined as our base layer of gameplay. So this is going to be the terrain and chiselstone brick structures. This is all very simple and straightforward to recreate, and therefore there's a lot of it. Obviously, there's terrain everywhere, and chiselstone brick structures are a very common thing to see populating the world. When you move up to level 3, we get to places that are more uncommon but still somewhat plentiful. This might be a ruin or a small settlement with a little bit more gameplay complexity, but ultimately not too much. They take a bit more focused effort than the lower stuff, but they're still not all that involved, at least not by multiple departments. Beyond the build, the most you'll see here is along the lines of a single lore book, a custom trader, maybe a spawner or two with simple custom enemies. These are projects that may take a few sessions to get done, but they do help to make the open world feel a little bit more alive. The fourth tier and above is where we get into the good stuff. This is dungeons, major structures, towns, where gameplay is significantly more interesting due to a higher density of interesting builds, juicier lore, story progression, and a bit more code. There aren't too many of these, but this is where the game starts to really shine for most players. The fifth and top tier is where we go all out, like the Aphelion. This is full code involvement in a high density build, almost always going to be story relevant. Many different things are going to point you here, and it is where we raise the stakes the most. There are maybe a dozen of these across the entirety of the map, because they are often weeks to months long projects on the dev side. So, this graphic at large is a bit reductive. Many structures can't be super neatly sorted into one tier or another, but it's helpful to understand how every location functions as part of a greater whole. The general rule of thumb is that we have large amounts of lower tier content that is guiding you towards smaller amounts of high tier content. You can see this a bit in the opening to the map that we brought as an example at the beginning. When you load into the world at first, you will first obviously recognize terrain, and then you will find chiselstone brick structures. This is immediately going to have paths and Kiko paths, so real roads and more subtle things in the terrain that are guiding you towards the first smallest town, like Drabiel, and then the first terminus tower structure, which is our fast travel hub, which is going to eventually lead you up towards all story progression and therefore shoehorn you in towards the good stuff. Now, there is one big flaw you may notice in this diagram, which is the location-specific part of the complexity. You'd be right to notice this, but I noticed it first. So, the reason that location-specific complexity is not the only thing to consider is because, as previously mentioned, you can bring your cool custom stuff with you all over the place. The reason that the feeling of complexity, as previously described, increases as you progress is because you have more stuff that is constantly custom content you're bringing into these locations. What this does is it can significantly raise the floor of all your experiences. You might get just as much out of clearing the burnt palace with a vanilla diamond sword and vanilla diamond armor as you would from clearing a very simple tower structure with a really cool custom sword and chestplate. So, the big takeaway from this is that games are interactive. The smartest decisions when efficiently designing an open world are not just tied to the world itself, but also how you interact with it. So, what this comes back to is player investment and raising the stakes. Throughout the entirety of Jamal, we are toying with player expectations in multiple ways. What you start out in is a well-made but still reasonably familiar custom plains biome, and you work your way up to clearing out huge dungeons and alien biomes on the moon. The narrative follows suit, starting out from a pretty simple premise that's very on par with the average adventure map, more or less, before really taking shape around the game's halfway point. For its entire runtime, Jamal is kind of daring you to underestimate it before pulling back the curtain that shows you how much more it can be. To a player that buys into this mentality and is willing to really engage with the world, this can play to incredible results. The reason that I personally think that this works as well as it sometimes does is because Jamal really invites players to make the world their own. We talked about this earlier. In the micro-level world design, in the biome of Mariul, we talk about how sometimes you'll loop back around on yourself, and this forces you to organically learn your way around the world and really become part of the map. As you are gathering gear, your custom gear, you're figuring out your own ways to play. And more so than anything else, what I think is perhaps the biggest strength of the sandbox in this regard is that you can build a base pretty much anywhere in this world, in this terrain that you want. This kind of thing, where you design a world in such a way that people have to engage with it and then want to engage with it in a way that ramps up, naturally makes very, very passionate and lasting fans. It's one thing that I speak to from experience as someone who joined the community, took on a big project and got to know the world super well. And now 2 years later, here I am as one of the most active devs on the team. The beating heart of all of this is, of course, the foundation of the world, the base layer of gameplay. Everything comes back to the fact that we have an engaging, simple to recreate open world with detailed terrain and a simple, satisfying game loop in the chiseled stone brick. And with that, I will pass it off back to Riff to bring us home.
Ready. Oop, there we go. So, games are interactive experiences. They must remain engaging for their entire runtime, and engagement is learning. In fighting games, you learn the character. In exploration games, you learn the world and how to navigate it. In survival games, you learn how to live. Learning and applying knowledge is not the only source of fun in a game, but it's a huge part of why they work. To that effect, fostering learning in an open world is really hard. Linear games allow for more control over novelty and keeping the content fresh. In open world games, that's just too much content to develop, and you can't make every encounter totally novel. You need shortcuts and reusable systems. Minecraft gives us the advantage of it being the ultimate sandbox, having a suite of existing tools, and for us, we found our chiseled stone bricks worked very well as tiny puzzles that become huge volume. Open world games are too big for their own good. That's their fatal flaw. Eventually, fatigue, familiarity, predictability all start to settle in as you're exploring, and you're met with fewer surprises and less learning. When developers get stretched thin, the baseline becomes not enough. So you need to identify content that is worth extra investment. Content that keeps players on their toes, keeps them guessing, keeps them surprised. Unexpected and unpredictable experiences are very important. The Burnt Palace is a great experience by itself, but the greater value in that is once players experience that the first time, they start to wonder and ask themselves, when will I find another experience like that? It builds wonder, anticipation, and uncertainty, and keeps exploration exciting. So why an open world? With that flaw and those compromises considered, why make an open world at all? Well, Dramal's goal is to be the ultimate exploration fantasy, where you can go anywhere, do anything, and be immersed in a handcrafted world. In a typical game structure, it's difficult to achieve that same experience. Players need to feel invested, believe the world is real, and feel like it's a place they could fall in love with. An open world is simply the only way that we could achieve what we want to do. So, some information about 2.3 here for my community. It is still a ways out, and we still aren't ready to share too much of it. Progress is being made every day, and the Primordial team is currently in the healthiest state it has ever been. We are continuing to make Dramal's open world as strong as it can be in accordance with these principles, but the overworld is not the only thing being focused on in 2.3. The majority of our development time for 2.3, technical, art, writing, building, etc., are all being poured into a post-game experience that will also be available as a separate standalone download from the main map. It will also be integrated into Dramal, but it'll be available separately. Our primary goal is to introduce a greater curated challenge, a refinement of our design principles, and a significant step up in our build and technical quality. With this, we also want the world to feel much, much larger. Internally, we have been calling this Dramal's sister story. So, before you all leave, we're going to be taking questions. Stick around until after, and there will be a giveaway for merch and maybe another thing to share with you. So with that, I would like to invite Kiko up to the stage, and we will move into questions.
Yes, thank you so much for presenting designing an open world in Minecraft. Like you mentioned, we're going to bring Kiko onto stage now. They'll be a little bit smaller, but let's make them teleport. There we go. You're welcome onto the stage. Yeah, I'll let you guys answer questions for how long you want, and once you're ready to move on, I'll let you do that.
Sweet. All right, and then we have questions here.
And make sure to
Cool.
put your questions in Minecraft chat, and also if you're watching from YouTube, make sure to put them over there. Yeah, and they'll start answering questions as soon as they're ready.
So,
Um,
yeah, real quick here, I just want to knock this question out. Someone asked, what was the very first piece of lore that started Dramal? Who designed the story? Kiko?
yeah, I can answer that. Also, I'm Kiko. I am the lead game designer on Dramal, so I don't like saying I'm the mastermind, but I wrote most of the like core design content of this slide and came up with like the Chiddlestone brick stuff, and yeah. But these guys have all, of course, been an incredible help, and it's not just me. um, but yeah, so the first piece of lore we came up with, this is going to sound insane, but we were playing on an SMP, as mentioned, as Rift and I and a couple of friends. And we the seed we played on had two oceans and terrain in the middle, and then I basically asked, like, okay, what if the two oceans were gods? And then we came up with Malus and Virtro, and if you play Dramal, you know Malus and Virtro. And the whole world spiraled from there, essentially, and then the land in the middle became Dramal.
Yep.
Boy, there's a lot of questions. How do we want to
we
do this?
have
We want to this like
we have a document in
Okay.
our thread on the
Okay.
on the Discord. I'll link it again.
Thanks.
Let's see. How do updates affect our players? So unfortunately, our updates are big enough to where your progress is reset and doesn't carry over. But the gap here between 2.2 and 2.3 is wide enough to where like a replay will be warranted, and we're not changing too much of like the main story of the map or anything. So if you want to replay the map all the way when 2.3 comes out, you can do it. Or if you just want to experience that new piece of post-game content, that is why we are releasing it as a standalone download.
Yep.
See, Kiko, do you want to pick the next one here?
Sure. But yeah, the sandbox able to tunnel through walls. Yeah, I saw that earlier. I wanted to answer that. So, as people mentioned in the audience, often there's going to be adventure mode areas. Though those are pretty rare in like Bedrock, blocking off places. But yeah, there's very few places in the map that straight up restrict you like that. So for something like the Burnt Palace that we showed, that has no restrictions. There is nothing stopping you from pillaring up to the top of the castle and grabbing Mount Valentia. But we've observed most players do not do that because we do a lot of work to kind of get you immersed in the world and get you feeling grounded in it. So there's there's not I'm not sure how to explain it, but it's players are less likely to kind of break their immersion and break through everything and do that and like skip everything. There's also a lot of loot. There's just a lot of incentive to actually explore the structure. So we often don't see a lot of players actually break through stuff. But if they want to, they're absolutely free to, and I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
We're all fine.
It's something we keep in mind when designing things, but like if players want to do that, we let them, and that's just that.
Yes, Endermoon. That is exactly it.
Let's see.
There's a question here I'd like to take.
Yeah,
Yeah.
go for it.
Someone asked, how would you translate some of those design principles to Minecraft's procedural generation and structure design? And I think the answer here is we can't. But the reason for that is because so many of our structures are very hands-on. Because it's so easy to quickly build and prototype all sorts of structures in Minecraft, basically everything is built from the ground up. There's this example I like to cite, which is a comparison to Breath of the Wild, where all of the ruins in Breath of the Wild are made out of the same couple of structures rearranged in different ways. There will be a staircase, and under the staircase there is a place you can go. In Elden Ring, something very similar where you'll have that staircase down to a chest or boss room. In Dramal, basically every ruin is built from the ground up in a unique style that reflects the geologic history, depending on the build material. It reflects the archaeological history. You can learn things about the people who lived there and what they did there, what sort of things they engaged in, the way their society was organized, all of these sorts of things. And that's just in the ruins, which are oftentimes the most procedural part of an open world game. Even for stuff like trees, I have put in probably dozens of hours going around the world just fixing tree roots that I find that are out of place. If you paste them in World Painter, sometimes the roots will be floating, and I have done many, many thorough passes of the world just to make sure that those are all gone.
K1, are there any questions you want to take here? Anything jumps out to you?
Taking a look, yeah.
This is one that I would like to answer, but
Go for it.
Kiko.
so this question is, what advice would you like to give to someone who wants to create a similar experience? So the best advice I can give is you should just try to do it. And your first time at it, it's probably not going to work out, and you just have to keep trying. So when Rift and I started this, we made 3 different iterations of Dramal, and 2 different versions of the second iteration. We tried many, many times to make this happen over the course of our entire friendship, like 8 or 10 years at this point. And it was only when we had gotten enough experience, just firsthand experience, to actually feel like we had the confidence and capability to make something like Dramal V2. And then we had made that, and then we brought on more people onto the team, and their experiences added so much more to Dramal, and it made so much better. Like 2.2 is miles ahead of 2.1 because we had a large team of different ideas and different people from different experiences. And yeah, so that's the best advice I can give. You just need to do it. You need to iterate. You need to keep trying over and over, because it's hard, and it's not likely you'll get it right the first time. But it can be done, and it's really satisfying.
K1, anything for you?
I could do some rapid fire simple ones. I want to leave most of like a lot of these are about like what design principles early on came into this, and
Yeah,
that's
okay.
totally you guys' area. I can do some rapid fire. Well, Chris
Yeah,
Nesho
sure.
still be making music for 2.3. He's on the team, but we have another primary new composer now.
Arsene is his name.
Yeah. Or Sonos Vitae.
Sonos Vitae.
Yeah.
He's excellent. Some of the patrons have heard some of his stuff. It's very, very, very good. We're excited about what he brings to the team. I think we've effectively answered how long has Dramal been in development for the overall process, because that was 2016 started, and then V2 came out in March 31st, 2020, and was in development for a year before that, right?
Yeah, we started Dramal Primordial in 2019, and that is the
January.
kind of current version of January 2019. We released it about a year later, so that's the
The
current
current
version
base
of the,
terrain version, and then it's gone undergone content
So
updates
actually,
since then.
there's another question here that's asked about with this world being developed since 2016, how do you avoid new areas feeling like a completely different game? Have we had to go back and update older areas, whether through game skills or game blocks? And this is actually something that we are doing and have done. Between 2.0 and 2.2, we did go back and overhaul and update a couple of biomes, and a lot of biomes between 2.2 and 2.3 are receiving some pretty major terrain overhauls and are being updated with new blocks and some new design principles with them.
I'll take a. There's another question here that I'm interested in. There is, which part of Dramal are you least happy with from a game design perspective?
Oh,
And
I bet Kiko's got thoughts on that.
I bet Kiko has thoughts on that. I think everyone on the team has pretty major
Yeah.
thoughts on that. But I think the general consensus is we're not very happy with the loot situation. With these chiseled stone bricks, it's fun to solve the puzzles, but there's only so many times you can like find 3 bowls and hey, a diamond in the chests before it starts to get a bit boring. We do a lot to try and spice this up with unique rewards, custom currencies, so on and so forth. And we even tried to implement an entire devotion system where you could sacrifice some of these unwanted items to the various aspects and deities on the map. And then we weren't very happy with that either. Uh, so it's just one of those things that comes with building in Minecraft. We have to work around the limitations that Mojang gives us, and those limitations can be very harsh sometimes. It's just an unfortunate fact, but the good news is those restrictions also breed creativity. We've got some really interesting ideas for 2.3 on how to solve this problem, but I'm not going to talk about them.
I think we've got time for maybe like 2 more questions here. Kiko, if you wanna
Yeah.
pick those out.
Sure. There's a couple. There's one that is about the ending that part of me wants to answer without spoiling anything, but I'm not sure if I should.
Nah.
I'd say skip it. Yeah.
All right. I just really like Dark Souls, guys. I'm sorry.
That's the answer to that question.
Yeah.
You can
That's
talk about
yes.
the ending in the completion chat of our Discord server after you finish the map.
You can.
True.
I'll probably answer. Yeah. Okay. Did
Oh,
you
there's
guys
one-
always? Oh, yeah. What?
No, go for it.
Okay. Did you guys always know you wanted to be a multiplayer / single player experience? A lot of adventure maps lock how many players can participate. So yeah, from the get go, we designed Jabal as multiplayer first. That's not really as reflected now in the modern map, but yeah, from the start, we wanted to make it as something for our friends to play and experience because originally we wanted to turn Jamal into a D&D campaign for our friends. And so I had a bunch of D&D one-shots that I ran. For those of you familiar with the lore, the assassination of the Tide Queen was one of the one-shots. Adventuring into Yavlix was one of them. But yeah, so Jamal was built for friends to play together, to experience together. And so like early 2.0 was very sparse. It was kind of designed with the expectation you have a lot of different people going off in different directions. And in 2.2, we started like fully adapting. Like, okay, you can play this solo, you can enjoy it just as much, sometimes even more, depending on the kind of player you are. And yeah, we do say at the start of the map, it's like 8 players maximum. It's not really 8 players maximum. It's just you might run into some balancing issues because we don't accommodate scaling above 8 players. But yeah, that's that.
Yeah. And then I saw a question here that was, how many Easter eggs do you guys add, and what inspired them?
Billion.
Jamal is full of Easter eggs, too many to count, and they're very silly. And it was very important to me that we still had a lot of those Easter eggs and kept them silly, because growing up playing like Minecraft adventure maps like Vex Super Hostile and things like that, that little air of silliness is what I really loved about them, and so I wanted to keep that in Jamal, while still having a pretty serious plot line for it. All the side stuff can be silly sometimes.
Yeah, Jamal can be very funny. I don't mean to pat myself on the back, but a lot of these guys have given a lot of really silly little Easter eggs.
Right. I think we can take one more good question.
Okay.
Okay, do you want to take anything, or?
Let's see.
I'm sort of eyeing the lore-wise.
Real quick, I see Shloopy just tossed in, how can we support the team, whether as fans or potential contributors? What is the best way to support Jamal? So there's a couple things you can do. We have a Patreon where it's like the minimum on there is like $5 a month, and we are trying to drop some content there at least once a month to tease out 2.3. Otherwise, supporting us via social media, just like liking and sharing our posts, that is easily the second best way you can support us, is just by helping to get the word out about Jamal. Tell your friends, play with your friends, just share and spread the word.
And we want to turn this into a career at some point, like making games. So
yeah,
want to spread the word.
Yeah, we would love more content creators to do videos on Jamal, either full playthroughs or, because that's not as in vogue nowadays, just showcases. Really anything.
Yeah. All right, Kiko, you find anything as our question finale?
Sure. When did you decide to commit 100? Actually, I'm gonna have 2. I will answer the second one, but it'll be very short.
Okay.
When do you decide to commit 100% to working on Jamal instead of pursuing other passions and careers? I mean, a lot of us still have jobs that we work at, and we try to find time in the day. Like I work 5 days a week. Rift also works, and we just try to find time to do this, and we don't have as much time as we used to. And some people have more time than others. But in terms of just like commitment to this, it was before Rift and I started. Well, it was after we made the first iteration of Jamal, um, where we basically adapted an existing map to use for our own purposes on just our own private server. And that was kind of our first experience like designing a game and like just dabbling in game design and like doing that over like those 2 weeks where we basically just found asset packs on Planet Minecraft and all that stuff. It was so fulfilling, and I just fell in love with it so much. I knew like, okay, I want to do this for the rest of my life. I want to keep making games and making game design and all sorts of stuff. It's so fun. And the other one I wanted to answer. What is the greatest achievement of each developer in Jamal? So each developer would have their own separate answers, but I think a lot of them would say their greatest achievements are all in 2.3. So
Yeah.
Yeah.
Honestly,
I
yeah.
can absolutely say that that is my that is my answer.
Yeah. All right.
I can
so,
really quickly. Are you guys
Oh, yeah,
planning
yeah.
to chase an update to Minecraft's newer versions? Yes, we are currently still rolling updates. We are on 26.2 right now, planning for 26.3, and we'll keep going until everything breaks.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the plan. All right. So that is all the time we got for questions, but hang around for just an extra minute here, okay?
Yeah. So before we get out of here, would you guys be interested in like one more thing? Like, I just want to gauge the audience. Like, would that be cool? I'm seeing a few yeses. Okay. Cool. So last October, the team surprise dropped a very short little playable teaser. It's framed as a flashback to a night some 1100 years before the main map story. It was called The Archived Memory. Even if you don't know us before, you may recognize its subject from the posters that we have all around the summit, because it's got this guy, this bright big blue star that's only just appeared in the sky over Jamal and caused a little bit of a crisis at a nearby observatory. It has been quite a while since then, so do you think we should maybe check back in on it? I think we should probably. Okay. Let me see if I can get like a better view for you guys. I can try and like enhance. That's not quite it. Hold on. Do you guys know how to like make this? Oh, there it is. Does that work for you guys? This right here is a lovely piece of key art by Scorp, one of our new artists that we brought into the team a couple of months ago. And as you may have surmised, it is the very first look at the second archived memory. This one will be set on the Cherry Blossom Island of Sod, a favorite biome for many Jamal players. To Feel the Stars is a continuation of the storyline introduced in the first memory. That one was mostly a story hook, boiling down to a chunk of new terrain, a skybox object, and a big old lore book, really. This one is a good bit more than that, believe me. The team is very, very excited to get this into your hands, and you will not need to wait too long because it's out in 2 days. We'll be dropping Archive Memory 2 this Sunday, August 23rd. So do keep an eye on our Discord for further information when it goes out, and we hope that you will join us then. But that'll be it from us for real this time. So it has been a pleasure to be at Smith Summit 2026. If you're here from our community, I really do implore you to check out the rest of Summit before closing ceremony tomorrow. There are tons and tons of really cool projects here, and in the time that I've had between prepping this panel and AM2, I've really loved just seeing as much of the server as I can. Up on the screen now are QR codes and links to our Discord. On the left, our website if you want to play Jamal or read more about it. And in the middle, you can, if you're watching live, you can submit to win one of 3 real-life Jamal posters that we're giving away. So we'll be closing that form in about 10 or so minutes. So if you want to put your Discord username in there for the giveaway, you've got until then, and we'll be contacting winner shortly. So
Yeah,
thank you
look out
again.
for a Discord message from me, Rift. If you have been selected as a winner, I'll be messaging folks later today. Like K1 said, that QR code is going to be invalid in about 10 minutes here.
So yeah, that should be all from us. We'll leave this up here. And thank you all for showing out and have a great weekend and last bit of Summit here. We hope to see you soon.
Yeah.
Thank
Thank
you
Give
you,
a round of
everyone.
applause to
And-
these guys for putting together this wonderful panel. They did basically everything. It was amazing.
Yeah, I
All right,
really
thank you
find
guys
that
so much for
sentiment.
showing up. All right. Enjoy the rest of Summit, folks. Goodbye.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.